News never stops. CBS News 24/7, aptly named for that very reason. And Mugo, you are taking the torch from here, my friend.
I sure am, Reed. Thank you so much. Have a great Friday. We start this hour in Tallahassee, Florida. People embraced each other and they brought flowers to a makeshift memorial at Florida State University as they remembered the victims of yesterday's mass shooting. A somber difference today, though, to the frantic sights on the ground there and sounds from just yesterday.
Oh my gosh. You guys okay?
And that's video of students running away from campus moments after a gunman opened fire and killed 2 people yesterday. 6 others were rushed to the hospital, including the suspect. Police identified him as 20-year-old Phoenix Eichner, an FSU student and the stepson of a sheriff's deputy of Tallahassee's home county. Authorities said the weapon he used in the shooting was his stepmother's former service weapon, which she now owns as a personal handgun. CBS News spoke to one FSU student. I'm actually hearing right now there's a press conference with doctors about some of those victims in that shooting yesterday at FSU, so let's listen to it live.
Ability to open this gathering today. TMH wants to extend our prayers and love to the patients and families impacted by this tragedy and to the larger FSU community. Dr. McCullough, who is with us today, administration, faculty, staff, and students. This has been an incredibly difficult time for our community. We're here today to provide an update on the medical response and care following the tragic incident that occurred on the FSU campus yesterday. Our goal is to be transparent, informative, and respectful to those impacted, while also protecting patient privacy. I want to take a moment to thank the first responders, law enforcement, and emergency personnel whose swift actions helped save lives. Our emergency room and trauma team are the very best, and their dedication to this community is really without equal. It's just one example. In the last 24 hours, we've had so many additional physicians, nurses, and other healthcare workers not on shift come in to volunteer their time to make sure that all our patients are getting the best possible care. Joining me today are key members of our medical team who have been directly involved in the response efforts. They'll share updates on patient conditions, they'll explain the medical protocols we have followed, and answer questions as appropriate. But first I want to invite Dr. Richard McCullough, President of FSU, to make a few brief remarks. Dr. McCullough.
Thank you very much. From the bottom of my heart, I just wanted to express our gratitude to the healthcare professionals who took care of our students who were shot and injured, and we just appreciate it so much. We can't say enough good things about Tallahassee Memorial HealthCare. The hospital's done an amazing job in partnering with us throughout this tragedy, and we just appreciate so much the great job that everybody's done here. I just wanted to express that gratitude to all of you.
Dr. Brett Howard, I think will start us off.
Yes, so my name is Brett Howard. I'm one of the trauma and general surgeons here at Tallahassee Memorial Hospital. We're going to go ahead and first introduce everybody. We'll start down at the end.
I'm Dr. Megan Morrow, one of the trauma and general surgeons here.
I'm Matthew Turtso, trauma and general surgery.
I'm Pat Pennington. I'm one of the general surgeons and trauma surgeon.
Melissa Amundsen, maxillofacial trauma.
Joey Gerard, general surgery.
Matthew Ramser, trauma and general surgery.
Jared Robertson, colorectal and general surgery.
Shelby Blank, general surgery and breast surgery.
Tracy Graham, emergency medicine.
So shortly before noon yesterday, we were notified of a event occurring on FSU campus. At that time, ER, surgery, and OR leadership, as well as our administration, responded to our emergency department and prepared to receive patients. Shortly thereafter, we began receiving patients. Those were gunshot wounds to extremities, chest, abdomen, all in rather stable condition. We activated certain resources that we have. This is unfortunately things that we train for, although do not expect to occur, but we were prepared and activated certain resources. We in total received 6 patients. All 6 were in stable condition upon arrival. 3 of them did go to the operating room and have since been out of the operating room. All 6 of them today are in stable condition, one which is in fair condition given a serious injury. We do feel that all will make a full recovery. 2 of them are possibly going home today, which we're extremely proud of. Overall, like I said, unfortunately we do have to prepare for these sort of events, and I can't speak enough for the team that's here and the team that's not here. Our community, especially our medical community, is extremely close. Everything from our law enforcement, our EMTs, firefighters, FSU, is a really big part of this hospital, and so that relationship, as well as the relationship between our nurses, our techs, our doctors, really is why things here went very smoothly, and I am extremely proud of all of them. We will open up for some questions. Otherwise, that's it.
I had a question. Marcus,
Yes, sir.
News Nation. In your line of business, time is everything. Can you talk about the work of the EMS responders getting patients to you quickly, and then can you, in any sort of way, lay out what happens when you receive a sort of I don't know if you're going to call it a mass incident, but some sort of influx of patients from one area, how that works?
Yes, we have systems in place, so we are communicating right away with law enforcement and EMS. The biggest part of this is you don't know how many patients you're going to receive. So we are prepared to activate as many resources as we need. That's why you see so many surgeons up here today, because they all came immediately to help. We have a trauma surgeon that mostly does breast surgery now. We have a trauma surgeon that does mostly colorectal, but they all responded. But yeah, the hardest part of it all is you don't know how many patients you're going to get.
Dr. Howard, can you talk with respect to patient confidentiality about the types of injuries that you were able to treat? I mean, you have a variety of different surgeons up here from a variety of different disciplines. So what kind of injuries were you facing with?
Yeah, so Dr. Ramsay, if you want to give a little more detail on that.
We faced injuries that involved the torso and extremities, some of which require surgery, some of which can be managed without surgery. The response was very fast, and the patients were relatively stable, so we were able to successfully treat all of the injuries, which involved abdominal surgical procedures and also facial surgery.
Without violating HIPAA, are you able to tell us ages of any of the victims, any sort of demographic information?
No, sorry, we can't give you any of the specific age details or details related to the patients.
Were any of you able to talk to any of the patients and describe their attitude coming in? Obviously, they're shock and trauma, so what was that like?
Yeah, so they were all, and I've said this on other interviews, very, very brave. There's the moment of shock, but all were able to talk to us, kind of give us, how they're feeling, where they're feeling pain. But, all of them were very clear-minded and able to converse with us.
Trying to get some clarity on the number. You said 6 total victims treated here. Does that include the suspect, or is he treated elsewhere? And were all of these gunshot victims?
Yeah, so 6 patients, that's all I can tell you.
Were they all gunshot victims?
Yes.
Doctor, can you clarify when you say fair and stable, is one worse than the other at this time?
So one we'll say is fair, mostly because of some of the symptoms related to the seriousness of their injury, but still should make a full recovery.
We keep hearing from students on campus that this has shattered their sense of safety and security. I'm wondering how you guys are doing after you've gone through what you went through, and also, I was here in 2014 for the mass shooting then. I'm wondering if any of you were here as well, and what that's like to go through several mass shootings.
Dr. Blank?
I was, it was, obviously a little more of a limited situation, but I think, unfortunately, traumatic violence is something that goes on, whether it's a few over the course of a weekend versus many compressed into a couple of hours. Obviously, this gets a lot more attention than the injuries and the gunshots that happen on any given weekend in any given community. So I think it's, it's something, unfortunately, you don't ever want to be inured to. But I think that, we were very lucky. Obviously, this was catastrophic, but given the numbers of students in that compressed area, the recipe for disaster is very scary.
So were you here during 2014?
2014, one of those students, all the students survived, the one did have non-state miscarriage. When you say all of the patients are expected to make full recovery, will any have lasting issues like that?
Again, I won't give any specifics at this time. I would say comparably, I expect all 6 to make full recoveries.
The 2 deceased, did they make it here at all? Was there any chance to, or was that an issue on just that?
No, we received 6 patients. Yeah.
What is the condition of the shooter? The condition of the shooter right now?
We have no comment on any sort of related to the shooter. Yeah, we have 6 patients here.
So that's the clarification. You can't say that you
Correct.
and you can't say that they're students or not.
Correct.
So you have 6 victims here of a mass shooting. How does it work with them being treated? Are they on the, say for instance, they don't have insurance, the victims, are they on the hook? Do they have to pay, or does the state pay, or how does that work?
We treat every patient the same. All of that is handled separate from what we do. So yeah, again, we don't check insurance cards.
As far as the injuries are concerned and the caliber of weapon used, could you get into those details at all? Were there multiple types of calibers? I only say this because there was an eyewitness who told me they believe they heard 2 different types of guns used by the gunman.
Yeah, I don't have any specific information on that.
The patient was in fair condition. Was that the one who required facial surgery, or did you say?
I can't speak to that, sorry.
Is there a patient that required facial surgery?
Yes.
What would you say you learned from that event? I mean, because you guys, I think every time something happens, I'm sure you guys regroup, talk about it, and then, try to implement, God forbid it happens again. What was this like for you guys?
I'll say our system worked. We at least do 1 simulation a year. Again, we were prepared. We always like to say we learned something from every sort of interaction and any sort of event. So, but if anything, I'm just proud of everybody. I think what speaks to it is the relationship we have with our entire staff, with our hospital, and just, the importance of continuing to practice.
1 simulation a year, is that table exercises, or do you have people wheel
We
in
do a
and-
full event,
What are the differences or similarities between reality and exercise?
Well, you can never replicate what just happened yesterday without living it. But, we have all staff respond to it, everything from our blood bank to, other personnel that are in other parts of the hospital, our administration, everybody is involved in those simulations. But again, it doesn't complete, you don't get that, anxiety, that the stress that you do with the real event.
Doctor, when you talk about injuries to the face and torso, how fortunate are some of these victims to be able to walk away and make a full recovery?
Yeah, so definitely very fortunate. Dr. Amundsen is our oral maxillofacial surgeon, so I'll let her speak a little bit more without going into details related to that.
I'm sorry, what kind of question do you have about?
How fortunate are some of these victims to walk away, being able to make a full recovery, even though they received wounds to the face and the torso?
Yeah, fortunate. I mean, we treat a lot of these types of injuries here, actually, ballistic injuries in particular. And so the course is generally protracted several months, but we always return them to full function at the end.
Got time for 2 more questions, and we'll let them get back to work.
Members of the community, I mean, is there, if they want to help, is there blood that's needed, or just how can they kind of help themselves?
No, I'd say at this point, the best thing for the community is, just support each other. We know that there's a lot of advocates out there. We know we have our chaplain services. We have lot of services to kind of cope with what's just happened. So we don't need any sort of blood donations, although I always say go out and donate blood. But yeah, no, nothing like that.
Did the location of the hospital being so close to the university kind of the time thing we all know is the most important, right? I mean, the people on the ground probably got to this stage. Do you guys think that all of it worked probably to your advantage by having it?
Yeah, absolutely. We are a level 2 trauma center, the only within a certain distance, in the Big Bend. So we know what role we play. Thankfully, we are towards the center of Tallahassee, very close to the university. So it definitely helps in situations like this.
Dr. Howard, excuse me just a minute. Dr. Howard, can we let everybody go down the line and see if there's anything we left out that needs to be provided and kind of instruction before we finish?
Any comments
I
from
don't
anyone?
have any additional comments.
What is the cause of death of people that pass away? The war?
Oh, we have no information on any of that. Yeah.
I just have a last timeline question. When would you say things were under control, or what sort of phrase would you use for that? From getting the first patient until things were?
Within an hour. We had at least 2 patients in the operating room within an hour. We talk about time from patient arrival to getting CT scans. That was within an hour. So you talk about 6 patients, that's impressive.
Was there a victim treated for non-gunshot wounds?
Not that I'm aware of.
Doctor, you talked about how fortunate some of these victims were. Could centimeters have made a difference for any of them?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, gunshot wounds, it can be a matter of inches or centimeters.
Obviously, this comes as there have been conversations about the hospital's future. Elise Brown, Tallahassee Democrat, so local reporter was very involved in these conversations. I want to know if, at all, how does this moment kind of factor into that discussion?
It doesn't at all. We function, we've been in partnership with this community, FSU, for a long time. We operate as so no factors whatsoever.
This incident happened on Holy Week, Easter's on Sunday. Just wondering how this will impact your Easter plans and what you're carrying into the weekend.
Just spend time with our families, that's the same thing for us. We certainly are used to this, but we're all here to support each other, and we'll just take it a day at a time.
Any other comments from our physicians? Anything we left out or important to share? Do any of our physicians speak Spanish? He has a specific Spanish language question.
Somebody could speak Spanish. I think this will be it, guys.
Thank you so much. Thank you for what you did. Thank you for being so gracious.
Thank you.
Yes, we have an amazing team. Thank you all for being here.
These are the doctors who treated those 6 patients following the shooting yesterday at the FSU campus. Let's bring in CBS News senior coordinating producer Anna Schechter now, who's been following the story for us since it broke here on 24/7. Anna, what stood out to you from what you heard in that news conference?
Well, just the number of surgeons who were available to jump in immediately. Everything happened so quickly. We just also got a timeline from police that the suspect was down within 4 minutes. As soon as the 6 injured got to the hospital, you had surgeons raising their hand coming in to address the wounds. And so 3 of those 6 went into surgery, likely very quickly. The other 3 actually did not even require surgery, despite the fact that we just learned there that all of them came in with injuries from gunshots. So that's just remarkable, and good luck. We learned all 6 are in stable condition. 5 of them are in good condition. 1 is in fair condition. But the lead doctor who just spoke said he expects all to make a full recovery. In fact, 2 of them will likely go home today. So that is really good news. I noted some of the specialties. There was a facial trauma expert, abdominal expert, colorectal expert. So it's unclear if those specialties were just the people who came to help or if that tells us anything about the injuries. They didn't want to go into too many details other than extremities and abdomen were affected by the gunshot wounds. Those were my takeaways from the press conference.
And I'm also learning you have new details about the timeline of the event here. Can you tell us about that?
Absolutely. A police source just sent me, they just posted online a detailed timeline. So at approximately 11 a.m., the suspect arrived at the FSU parking garage. He stays in the area for an hour, moving in and out of the vehicle. I'm sure they got this from surveillance video, so they are updating us at what they know at this point. Then at 11:51 a.m., the suspect leaves the parking garage and very quickly begins shooting just 3 minutes later. So between 11:56 a.m. and 11:57 a.m., he fired the first shots. At 11:58, 911 was called, and at 12 noon, the suspect was down, shot by police. So very quick timeline there as soon as that first shot was fired by the suspect.
Yeah, some very important information there, giving us more of a clearer view of what happened yesterday. CBS News senior coordinating producer Anna Schechter, as always, thank you so much for all the details and information you bring to us here on 24/7. Thank you. And CBS News reporter Katie Wise, she joins us now from outside Tallahassee Memorial. Katie, what are you learning about those victims? What more came out of this news conference for you?
Well, just in this hour, as Anna said, we're learning so many new details about not only the victims in this case, but just the sheer effort that went into making sure that those patients were adequately cared for and were able to, as we are now hearing, potentially be able to go home today. As Anna also pointed out, I did hear one really interesting piece of this was that there was one abdominal surgery and one facial surgery that was involved yesterday. And in fact, within just an hour of those patients arriving at the hospital, there were actually 2 people who went straight into surgery right away. Pretty remarkable. Certainly requires all hands on deck. I actually was able to speak with one of those physicians just a little while ago before this press conference, and he told me it just meant so much to him to be a part of this response, to be able to help serve his community in this way, that really the work he was doing yesterday is nothing new. This is work he does all the time. It was just on a much larger scale. It required a much more in-depth and thorough response with many more team members than usual. As you heard, they had to bring in physicians and surgeons who are not even trauma trained to be able to help out and make sure that they had an adequate response. Mugo?
Yeah, and just really remarkable hearing that all 6 patients are expected to make a full recovery. Katie Wise, thank you so much for your reporting. All right, stay with us. We have much more news coming up right here on CBS News 24/7. We'll be right back. The Trump administration just started releasing the first portion of records on Senator Robert F. Kennedy's 1968 assassination. It will include about 10,000 pages of previously classified records. Sirhan Sirhan was arrested shortly after the assassination at the Ambassador Hotel in Los Angeles. But Kennedy's son, RFK Jr., insists his father's convicted assassin might be innocent. Heading overseas to Italy, where a cable car crashed to the ground south of Naples. We're learning 3 tourists were among 4 people who were killed yesterday. It includes a British woman and an Israeli woman. A 5th person is also in critical condition. Officials say a snapped cable brought both the upward and downward going cable cars to a halt, but the upward cable car eventually crashed. Crews are still working to get all the power back on in Puerto Rico, but we do have a positive update. Power was restored to about 99% of customers after an island-wide blackout hit the island earlier this week. A transmission line failed and then caused generators to shut down. An investigation is underway into whether a series of breakers failed or if overgrown vegetation is to blame. We turn to the Middle East now, where some Christian faithfuls are in Jerusalem to mark Good Friday. BBC correspondent Gary O'Donoghu is in Jerusalem, which reports that Hamas says it will not accept the latest ceasefire offer from Israel.
So this is Hamas formally rejecting the latest Israeli offer on the table, and that involved a 45-day ceasefire in return for the release of 10 of the remaining 59 hostages inside Gaza. Other elements of that deal would have included the release of Palestinian prisoners from Israeli jails and some aid being allowed back into Gaza. No aid has been allowed into Gaza by the Israelis since the beginning of March. So really there's nothing on the table at the moment. The National Security Council inside the White House said this proved that Hamas was not interested in peace, but in perpetuating violence. Meanwhile, the aid agencies on the ground are warning of an increasing humanitarian disaster, one of the worst disasters of a generation, as one spokesperson put it, and also a number of deaths, several dozen deaths each day of civilians, particularly children, in the last few days. The UN's Children's Agency said that should shock us all to the core. The difficulty here is that Steve Witkoff, the president's special envoy to the Middle East, is engaged on the Iran talks in Rome this weekend. He's engaged in the Ukraine talks in Paris. There's a sense that perhaps the US policy isn't pushing that hard at the moment in terms of bringing the war to an end in Gaza. And until that happens, it's difficult to see how these two sides will be brought in any way together. And no one really knows at this stage how this thing can end. Back to you.
Thanks, Gary. Sources tell CBS News the IRS is considering whether to remove the tax-exempt status for Harvard University. Officials with the Treasury Department made that request sometime this week. The White House spokesperson says that decision will be made independently of the president, but Trump commented on that possibility anyway. Let's take a listen to that.
Tax-exempt status, I mean, it's a privilege. It's really a privilege, and it's been abused by a lot more than Harvard, too, by a lot more than Harvard. So we'll see how that all works out. I don't think they've made a final ruling. I don't believe they've made a final ruling, but it's something that these schools really have to be very, very careful with.
Harvard quickly responded to the White House. A spokesperson told CBS News the government has long exempted universities from taxes in order to support their educational mission. The tax exemption means that more of every dollar can go towards scholarships for students, life-saving and life-enhancing medical research, and technological advancements that drive economic growth. House lawmakers, though, they're also getting involved. New York Congresswoman Elise Stefanik and Kentucky Congressman James Comer launched an investigation into the university. The two are, of course, longtime supporters of the president. They accused Harvard of ignoring the civil rights laws needed to receive federal funding. The two sent a letter to the university's president reading, "The committee requests documents and communications to inform its oversight of this matter and to determine whether legislation is necessary to ensure that institutions of higher education receiving federal financial assistance are no longer able to violate the law while lucratively benefiting from the generosity of the American people." The pretrial hearing for Sean Diddy Combs just wrapped up. Coming up, our team is outside the courthouse with the very latest. We'll be right back. You're watching CBS News 24/7. Welcome back. Right now, we are taking you to New York, where music mogul Sean Diddy Combs just appeared in court for a pre-trial hearing. The music producer's defense team wants to delay his sex trafficking trial. We'll have much more on that in just a second. Let's move on to a different story right now. People around the world are celebrating Good Friday. Religious officials led some of their followers across the Brooklyn Bridge today as part of their annual Way of the Cross. And in Israel, people retraced what tradition holds were the final steps of Jesus Christ while reciting prayers of the cross. Vice President J.D. Vance is in Italy. His first stop was in Rome, where he will participate in Holy Week events and meet with the Italian Prime Minister. It's unclear right now if the vice president will meet with Pope Francis. Typically, though, the Pope would preside over a service, but this year he has delegated responsibilities as he continues his recovery from double pneumonia. CBS News correspondent Chris Livesay reports from Rome.
Well, Pope Francis has been under strict doctor's orders to stay at home and rest and to limit mingling with the public. But this is Holy Week, And so much for doctors' orders. Yesterday, Pope Francis went to a prison here in Rome on Holy Thursday. Now, traditionally, he would wash the feet of these prisoners just as Jesus did on the Last Supper. Pope Francis admitted that he was feeling too frail to go that far, but just about 6 days ago on Palm Sunday, he was feeling well enough to come out into St. Peter's Square and mix and mingle with about 20,000 people. And just a few days before that, he was spotted inside of St. Peter's Basilica wearing little more than a poncho. He was being pushed around in a wheelchair. He wasn't wearing his traditional head covering. You could be forgiven for not even recognizing that this was indeed the Holy Father. All of it is rather extraordinary when you consider that he is still recovering from a nasty case of double pneumonia. Doctors say that at several points they considered, quote, letting him go. That's how seriously he was suffering from that illness, and he was only discharged a few weeks ago. However, the road to recovery is a long one. Later tonight, there will be the Via Crucis, that is the candlelight commemoration of Christ's crucifixion around the Colosseum. Pope Francis is not expected to appear at that event. However, Sunday is Easter. It's when he traditionally delivers his Urbi et Orbi address to the city and the world. It is among the most important moments of the entire year for Pope Francis, and so many are thinking that after making all of these surprise appearances, this event would be simply too big for Pope Francis to miss. Back to you.
Chris Lipsey, thank you. Turning our monitors to Nebraska, where severe weather led to this funnel cloud forming in Bennington, that's just outside Omaha, last night. Neighbors there reported hail the size of baseball hitting the ground during that storm. Look at that. And over in Chicago, residents there, they are preparing for some of that extreme weather to hit today. Our Jessica Birch has more on where the storm is headed next.
Well, as we head into this Easter weekend, we're gearing up for severe weather widespread throughout the states, anywhere from Texas all the way up into the Great Lakes. We have heavy amounts of rain right around the corner with mountain snow throughout the Rockies today, heading into our forecast tomorrow. But the severe weather takes the bait when it comes to this big weather story right around the corner, anywhere from the Great Lakes all the way across states like Oklahoma and Arkansas, Missouri, too. We can see anywhere up to around 4 to 7 inches of rain. On top of that, these thunderstorms that we're going to see could produce hail and damaging winds, too, to these communities, just as we're gearing up for what should be a nice, calm Easter weekend. That's not the case in some of these areas. We're concerned about flash flooding in some of these spots that could see up to around 7 inches of rain. We timeline this out all the way into our Saturday morning forecast. Areas like Oklahoma up into eastern portions of Kansas already dealing with heavy amounts of rain there. Same trend all the way over into St. Louis as we head into Saturday evening all the way into Sunday morning. Now we're heading into our Easter forecast. Notice how severe some of these storms are from Wichita all the way over into Chicago and everywhere in between. We're going to see these heavy storms sweep across the Mississippi into our Monday forecast. So let's time this out. Tonight, we could gear up for some severe thunderstorm activity anywhere from Oklahoma up into the state of Missouri, Illinois, and Indiana included. It doesn't change too much more. If anything, it becomes more widespread as we head into our Saturday forecast just ahead of Easter Sunday. Now, by Easter Sunday, it's sweeping across the Mississippi. We really keep a close eye on Arkansas, northern portions of Louisiana, where damaging winds and, of course, the potential for flooding is possible widespread throughout these communities. So the National Weather Service has issued flood watches that will remain in effect as we head into the afternoon hours today and into this weekend's forecast, with anywhere up to around 4 to 7 inches of rain north of Dallas all the way up into St. Louis. Back to you.
It is our Eye on America. CBS News is hearing your stories in your communities across the country. A new coffee shop in Philadelphia is brewing much more than just good coffee, but also a powerful story of resilience. CBS News Philadelphia's Eva Anderson introduces you to a small business owner who, after being exonerated of a crime he didn't commit, is now serving the community.
Each morning, Eugene Gilliard steps out of his home a free man. He starts every day with gratitude for the little things. Gilliard even views his commute as a blessing.
Something that I always wanted and had hoped for, be able to have my freedom, have my family, and be able to go to my business.
At just 18 years old, Gilliard was sentenced to life in prison, convicted of the 1995 murder of a man who prosecutors say was robbed and shot outside his North Philadelphia business. Gilliard maintained he was an innocent teen who simply lived in the neighborhood and was falsely identified by one eyewitness from a photo lineup. No physical evidence linked him to the scene.
So to have that happen was heartbreaking. But at the same time, as I acquired faith and knowledge, I understood that God put us in certain situations as a test.
Gilliard became his own advocate behind bars. Years into his sentence, another man confessed to the murder, prompting the original eyewitness to request a re-examination of the case. And after more than 15 years of self-advocacy and legal help from the Pennsylvania Innocence Project, Gilliard was free. After being locked away for more than 15 years, Gilliard now unlocks his own dream each morning. His wife, Najwa, an experienced barista, crafts the drinks, while Gilliard
How you feeling today?
connects with customers.
Something that I enjoy doing, interacting with people. You know, being incarcerated, that's something that, you know, we weren't afforded the opportunity to do.
It's an opportunity he'll never take for granted.
Appreciate you.
It's been over 10 years now, and Najwa still cherishes each day with her husband by her side.
I can't find enough words. No restrictions, no time limits.
For now, he and his wife are focused on making mouth-watering matcha lattes they can serve others while sharing Gilliard's story.
Thank you.
Enjoying coffee and conversations that lead to awareness about wrongful convictions.
It is inspirational to the community.
To see you be able to come out on top and follow your dreams in the midst of all that.
And though each cup of coffee says freedom, Gilliard says his biggest message is one of faith.
Freedom Coffee House represents more than a dream fulfilled. It's a reminder that no matter how dark the past, by the permission of God, the future is ours to reclaim.
Eva Anderson, CBS News, Philadelphia.
Amen to that. The pretrial hearing for Sean Diddy Combs just wrapped up. Coming up, our team is outside the courthouse with the very latest. You're watching CBS News 24/7. Welcome back. Let's try again and see if we can take you over to New York, because that is where music mogul Sean Diddy Combs just appeared in court for a pretrial hearing. The music producer's defense team wants to delay his sex trafficking trial next month. So let's take you to CBS News legal reporter Katrina Kaufman. She's live outside that courthouse for us. And Katrina, can you break down what happened today?
Mugo, for one, the judge pretty much immediately denied this request to delay the trial. He says that Sean Combs' team has sufficient time to prepare still, that their claims that they need more time to go through this evidence just don't meet his requirements. And in fact, he said that he doesn't understand why they can't prepare when Sean Combs has 4 different firms defending him in this case. The other ruling he made immediately is that Combs' team was trying to have 2 of the charges against Combs dismissed. He denied that as well. A lot of the discussion today was about a few of the victims in this case that the government wants to testify anonymously, as well as about expert testimony. The judge, at the end of the day, said that he is going to let 3 of the victims testify anonymously. And he said that the defense had actually acknowledged that they thought it was okay for one of them, who's being known as alleged victim number 2, that it was too sensitive for them to reveal their identity, and that the government had met a heavy burden here, he said. Sean Combs, the defense team, will be aware of these names. The jury will ultimately be aware of these names, but the victims will remain anonymous during the trial. The defense team did say that they had been in touch with the legal team of someone known as victim number 3, and supposedly they said that that victim felt quote unquote meh about testifying anonymously. So the judge asked the government to look into that, and if that's the case, he'll reconsider that victim. Apparently this is someone who is known, that the defense said could complicate their witness testimony because they'll want people to talk about that victim. But that was a lot of what today was focused on, along with some expert testimony. The government wants an expert to come in and talk about what can happen when people are victims of sexual abuse, how sometimes they can have fragmented memories or even suppress their memories of traumatizing events for many years. And the defense also wants to have a counter expert. So there was a lot of discussion about that today, and the judge is going to make a decision on it next week. There will also be a hearing next Friday, and that will be the last pretrial conference that's been scheduled so far before this trial is set to start on May 5th.
Okay, Katrina Kaufman, thank you so much for that update. Appreciate it. When we think of trade wars, we think of the world's biggest economic superpowers going head to head over tariffs. We think of Apple, we think of Amazon, but we should also remember the impact of small businesses on Main Street USA. These bread and butter business owners, they are worried that the high costs of tariffs on imports could put them out of business. Case in point, a small company in Pensacola, Florida makes its planners in China, but that stationery, well, it is now subject to sky-high tariffs. The owner is suing the Trump administration, alleging Trump used his emergency power to illegally enact the fees. Here's what she told CBS News correspondent Jolene Kent.
If this is the end of my American dream, I'm going to go down swinging.
President Trump has said, short-term pain for long-term gain. What's your response to that?
We can't survive the short-term pain.
CBS News Money Watch reporter Megan Cerullo joins us now. And Megan, in general, why is uncertainty so bad for these small business owners?
It's a word that economists keep on using to describe the state of the economy and the business outlook. And the other thing that we're hearing about uncertainty is that it's bad for business. One entrepreneurship expert said that uncertainty is actually the enemy of entrepreneurship. That's because it can obscure a business owner's future in borrowing costs. It can make it difficult for them to set prices if they're subject to these ever-changing tariffs because they manufacture their goods abroad and they don't know how much they're going to have to pay because the agenda keeps shifting. Those are a couple of examples of why it's so hard to operate a successful business, especially a small one that has less financial padding than a more established enterprise in such an uncertain economic climate.
So what is the Trump administration's message to those small businesses then? How hard are they being hit?
He wants them to manufacture the products they sell in the U.S. They're being hit really hard, though. Some say that the factories that manufacture the types of products they sell don't even exist in the U.S. So I talked to one business owner who makes lingerie that she designs in a factory in China. She can't import it right now because she'd have to pay taxes that are greater than the value of the goods themselves. So it would make no sense for her to import those goods. She said that uncertainty is even worse than the tariffs themselves because if she decides to move manufacturing to another country and then the China tariffs come down or come off completely, she said it'll have looked like a silly mistake or a silly move.
Yeah, always very important to think of those small business owners too and how this is affecting them, not just the Amazons and the Apples. Megan Cerullo, thank you so much for joining us on 24/7 today. Appreciate it. The Trump administration just started releasing the first portion of records on Senator Robert F. Kennedy's 1968 assassination. They will include about 10,000 pages of previously classified records. Sirhan was arrested shortly after the assassination at the Ambassador Hotel in Los Angeles, but Kennedy's son, RFK Jr., insists his father's convicted assassin might be innocent. Heading overseas to Italy, where a cable car crashed to the ground south of Naples. We're learning 3 tourists were among 4 people who were killed yesterday. It includes a British woman and an Israeli woman. A 5th person is also in critical condition. Officials say a snapped cable brought both the upward and downward going cable cars to a halt, but the upward cable car eventually crashed. Crews are still working to get all the power back on in Puerto Rico, but we do have a positive update. Power was restored to about 99% of customers after an island-wide blackout hit the island earlier this week. A transmission line failed and then caused generators to shut down. An investigation is underway into whether a series of breakers failed or if overgrown vegetation is to blame. We have much more news ahead here on CBS News 24/7. President Donald Trump making headlines during the swearing-in ceremony of Dr. Emmett Oz. Our team has a recap coming up for you. Stay with us right here on CBS News 24/7. Have a great weekend, everyone.